Hello and welcome to the Spring Break Movie Marathon. I am attempting to do 3 movies one day. Alright? And to start us off, we start us off with a bit of good luck. So last night I introduced you to Mortimer, the latest member of the Drive Home Reviews family. Let me introduce you to the newest member of the Drive Home Review family. Named for the film I went to see when I won her. So meet Drew. Alright? Drew loves mystery pictures. So welcome to the family, Drew. We're getting a little crowded over here. Yeah, I got quite the menagerie going. Alright. So we got to talk about this one. We really got to talk about this one. There's a lot to talk about in this one. But the thing I want to talk about the most when it comes to this movie is, where the hell did this movie come from? I'm serious. When did this happen? Okay, I remember reading like a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a month even, on one of the little news things I get on Facebook about, there's 2 new Nancy Drews. There's a new movie coming out, and I guess one of the networks, I think the CW, is thinking about doing a series about her when she's in college. All right, fine and dandy. And then when they said, okay, then there's going to be a new Nancy Drew movie, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I bet that'll be a fun little summer diversion or something like that. No word on it. I didn't even know they had started making it. And I'm scrolling through this morning looking for movie times, and there it is. I mean, let me give you kind of a picture of just how out of nowhere this came. I scroll through the Malco app regularly trying to see what movies are coming out. Not just, what blockbusters, but the smaller pictures, the Stan and Ollie's, the, wedding guests, the kid kind of things. And this movie appeared nowhere. Nowhere. Had no idea it was coming. This morning, I was scrolling through looking for a different movie. There it is. No advertising, no word about it. I have seen trailers for that piece of shit looking Wonderland movie at every movie I have gone to for the past 2 months. They had a trailer for it for when I was watching The Kid. They had a trailer for the Wonderland animated film in front of the rated R Western. But this movie, not a peep. And what makes me mad about that is that I would understand it if this was a shitty movie. I understand why you didn't hear anything about that god-awful Little Women update from last year. That makes perfect sense to me. That thing was terrible. They didn't want anybody to see it. This movie is absolutely delightful and charming. I had a ball watching it, and I am in no way, shape, or form the target audience for this thing. I mean, a little bit. When I was a kid, I must admit, I liked Nancy Drew more than the Hardy Boys, which is weird for a guy my age to say, because back in the 80s and whatnot, boys read the Hardy Boys and girls read Nancy Drew. That's the way it was. And I'm not exactly a big reader anyway, and I certainly wasn't back when I was a kid. So I only read, careful there, Drew. See, this is what I mean, we're getting crowded. So I only read a couple of them, but I liked them. I thought Nancy was a fun character. So I wouldn't say I have huge nostalgia for the property, but I've always had an admiration for it. I've always enjoyed the Nancy Drew style mysteries. They're very Scooby-Doo, and I've always loved that kind of thing. And again, this film is fantastic. It's a delightful picture. This movie is an excellent example of how to do a modern day adaptation correctly. Okay? The last time they tried to do Nancy Drew in the movies was a couple years back, and it was Emma Roberts, Julia Roberts' niece. And the film seemed to be a little bit more interested in parody than it was in actually creating a likable or enjoyable character. You know, they picked fun at Nancy Drew is also kind of one of those things, kind of like the 60s Batman show, that people love to pick at the same things. You know, oh, she's so perfect, everything she does is perfect, and that's all that the Emma Roberts movie kind of got. It was making big jokes about how everything she did was absolutely perfect. And again, what happens there is you don't create a character, you're making fun of the thing. And I forget which movie I was talking about when it came to parody a little while back, but again, the thing that makes a parody work, if you want to do a parody, is having genuine affection for the property. Because a good parody says, we love this because of these issues, not in spite of them. Or we're willing to overlook these issues because we think the show or whatever is really great. So I didn't feel like that film had any kind of affection for its subject matter, its audience. This movie, on the other hand, it is clear that they have a great deal of respect and love for the characters. The characters are very carefully and very lovingly updated so that they're still recognizable as the characters from the books that so many people have grown up with, but they're adjusted enough that they fit into the modern day kind of archetypes. And the characters do fall into archetypes somewhat. But I think they're archetypes that work. They're modern day archetypes as opposed to 30s and 40s archetypes when they were first created. I have got to say, first up, and definitely, I want to say this just right up front. The young lady they have playing Nancy Drew, and I'm sorry I cannot remember her name. This is the problem with doing one of these just off the cuff. I don't do a lot of research on them. She is phenomenal. She is so charming and delightful and energetic and charismatic. She is perfect for this role, and she carries the movie and does so with a grace that you don't see in a lot of adult actors. She does an amazing job. And what I really like, and this is a combination, I think, of the writing and the acting, is that Nancy is a fully realized character. She talks like a teenager. Not like what a 40-year-old man thinks a teenager sounds like. Now, I don't know if that's the writer who just has a really good ear for dialogue. I don't know if the writer has teenagers of their own that they listen to. I don't know if they let the actors kind of have a little bit of free range with the dialogue to update it or do whatever they need to do. But at any rate, she comes out sounding like a teenager, a real teenager. I would not be surprised. She reminded me a lot of my students. Matter of fact, all the girls did. All four of the young ladies in this movie did a phenomenal job. Bess and George don't get as much to do in this one. But they're still, the young lady playing Bess is phenomenal. She is so cute and just so very sweet. She also reminds me of one of my students. So I think I've railed on child actors on this show before, and now I got to give praise to some child actors. These four did a really great job. They had a really great bond. They weren't bound by the cliches of a teen movie. Again, I really like the updates they've made to Nancy, where she is still very intelligent. She, is still, she just kind of has a knack for seeing things, but she's not portrayed as perfect. She's a flawed character. She makes rash decisions. She just jumps in and doesn't think of the consequences. The very beginning of the movie, Bess has been cyberbullied. and Nancy decides to get revenge. So they set up this very elaborate thing to basically do the same thing to the kid that bullied her. And, you know, this looks like a thing, it's way too elaborate for a kid to actually pull off. But it feels like something a teenager would do to get revenge on another teenager. And it's all well, it's all good, but what I liked is that she gets caught and she gets punished for it. And her dad says, hey, it's great that you wanted to stand up for your friend, but that's not the way to do it. What you did was still wrong. It doesn't matter if your intentions were good, you still went about it the wrong way, and she gets punished. And I like that there does seem to be a character arc for Nancy in this one about learning about responsibility and consequences and whatnot. Kinda. I will say one of the flaws of the movie is it does fall into that kids movie thing of they make a big deal of constantly telling Nancy, you know, there's consequences to your actions, and you can't just do whatever, and you got to think things out, blah, blah, blah. And there are actually never any consequences to her actions. She gets out of her punishments. You know, I did think that was like telling us one thing and doing another kind of thing. But I like that it added dimension to her. Like I say, she wasn't a parody of the character. She was a new adaptation of the character with levels, with depth. And I think that's true of all the characters. Helen, I think, is the other girl's name, the blonde. It also gets a nice update to the mean girl, but a mean girl that we actually take time to go, okay, why is she the mean girl? We don't just assume she's the mean girl and just make her a plastic character. We give her some depth and some dimension, and it's really nice seeing the relationship between those two characters come along. So is it a perfect movie? It's not a perfect movie. No such thing as a perfect movie. I think as much as I'm praising the writing of it, the writing does feel very stilted and a little wooden in certain parts. Probably because they're trying to get out some exposition, and the exposition is very, very clunky. So, yeah, that doesn't always work. The ending kind of falls back into kind of Home Alone-iness. You know, it gets very Home Alone with the traps and contraptions and all that. So that part you're kind of like, okay. Honestly, though, I don't know how else I would have ended it, to be completely honest with you. But even those bad things lead me back to good things. The mystery is actually quite interesting. You know, and except for like one or two little things, the clues and everything that they find and the logic connections that they make feel like logic connections and clues that a teenager would latch onto. You know, they don't seem like so far outside the realm that you're like, okay, there's like one part, you know, where they're discovering what a chemical is that feels a bit like, okay, I know some really smart teenagers. I know some really, scientific teenagers. But I think even with the brilliant science teachers we've got where I teach, I don't know if these kids could do that on their own. Maybe I'm wrong, but still. The connections all seem really well done. And the suspenseful parts of this, I got to give it to it. For a film aimed at what I assume are, younger girls, junior high, maybe younger even. There's some genuinely spooky imagery. I won't say, scary, but there's some imagery I was like, shit, I would have been scared of that as a kid. So yeah, I really, again, going back to my anger, the only thing I'm angry at with this movie is there's no advertising for it. Unless, again, I don't watch cartoons or anything anymore unless they're on DVD. So I don't know if there's been advertisements for this on TV or not. But the fact that there's nobody probably knows about this movie, I feel is really bad. This is a good movie. And a good movie in the thankfully growing realm of movies for young kids and young girls especially. If you're a fan of the books, if you grew up with it, or you have kids who are growing up with it, if you have little girls who are reading them, this is a great movie for them. It truly is. And I want people to go see this movie. I mean, they could do a whole series of this. I felt the same way about this one as I did when I saw Murder on the Orient Express, and they ended Murder on the Orient Express with them going, there's a murder on the Nile. And I'm like, please, yes, I want to see that. They do the same thing here, where at the very end, they're like, oh, my cousin's getting married at Lilac Inn. And I'm like, yes, yes. And I'm so worried that this film is going to bomb because they didn't advertise it. We're never going to see that. So please, go see this movie. I mean, apparently we're getting a sequel to that piece of shit Angry Birds movie. We're getting a sequel to A Dog's Place with a dog's journey and, everything else. So if those things can get sequels, surely we can make this one get a sequel. This deserves a sequel. This deserves to be a series, maybe a 3 or 4 film series. I don't know if we would go much past that, but I think there's a lot of mileage to get out of this interpretation and these actors playing these characters. I think there is a lot of fun to be had. I mean, again, I'm not the target audience for this, but if I can go to it and go, okay, I had a really good time watching that movie, that should tell you something. So if I'm having a good time, I'm sure the kids will. So yeah, I really hope if the people who watch these reviews, I hope you realize this movie exists, and then I hope you go see it. Spread the word. Let's make this a thing. So, wrapping up, final grade, A. This gets a solid A from me. I'm not, signaling a right turn there. I'm A. This gets a solid A from me. Still a little bit wooden in the dialogue to really rate the A+, but damn enjoyable. And Lord Almighty, is it good to have enjoyable, fun movies again with real characters. Man, after 2018, I didn't think we'd ever see that again, and we're getting it by the bucket loads and in wonderfully surprising places this year. Love it. Let's keep it up. I got 2 more movies to see today. Let's hope it keeps that trend going. So, please, go see Nancy Drew, or if you're not a fan of it, tell people who might be. Let's get this thing going. Let's get a sequel going. I want to see The Mystery at Lilac Inn. That's actually my favorite of the books, so I really want to see that one. All right? All right. So, 1 movie down, 2 to go on my spring break, or end of spring break, really, marathon. So please tune back in and join me in a little while. So, till next time, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.